So we're in August 2006.
Rosh Chodesh Elul.
Rosh Chodesh Elul. And we're in the house of Rabbi Henry Okolica. And we're here to talk about our families, his life, our journeys, and to have some memories come back to us.
About the Shoms.
About the Shoms.
And the villages around Facha.
So
I think you have to say it all in English. Yeah, I remember when I came to Tan, I went to Fulda to Rabbi Dr. Khan, and he said to me, I want you to take over the whole Rabbinatsbezirk.
A rabbiner is like works for the government. He's one of this.
The rabbi was a state official, yeah.
A state official rabbi.
Yeah, they all were. In Germany, all the rabbis and all the people who were connected with any religious activities were government officials. You were a teacher, the state paid you. They retired you, they gave you pensions. So when Rabbi Dr. Khan said to me, would you take over the Rabbinatsbezirk? So I said, what does that entail? So he said, well, let's begin with your town where you are right now in Tan. That it gets you over to Wüst in Sachsen, which had a very, very strong Jewish community. Next to it, another Jewish community was Geisa, strong Jewish community. Well, in Geisa, I remember the Grünebaums and the Moses and the people who did have a store where I think he was related to.
Senta?
Was Senta, yeah. And all the children met in various places. Across the street where Senta lived, there was another family, and I have pictures of Geisa that I may make a copy for you. They came to me for Hebrew because they prepared themselves to go to Israel. And they met in Geisa once when I came, once a week.
They met in what building?
They met out on the street. It was a little brook, and there were steps, and we all sat on the steps outside in the facing the brook. It was very, very interesting nature. And when I have to look for the picture, I can identify the people. I met some of them later on in Jerusalem.
Did the community know you were there? The Germans around you, did they see you teaching? Were you left alone?
Yeah.
How did they respect you?
I had always the best of respect until the last. Well, I will get into that when the last time they were waiting for me on the railroad station in Tan, and they beat me up. And luckily, when I got up on Main Street, there was the family. What was the name? You have to remember that they opened up the door, and I fell into the door, and I was out of the hands of the Nazis.
How did you look that made it clear that you were a rabbi?
Nothing. I was very dressed modernly. I had no beard, nothing, but they knew. People knew who I was.
Did you have a kippah or a hat?
I always walked around with a hat, but not with a kippah. That would give me away right away. No, I always walked around with my hat. But anyhow, from there, from Geisa, I went to Wenigentoft, Mansbach. That was an interesting community. There used to be Jews living in Mansbach. Then they moved all to Wenigentoft, which was next to it. And you had to walk to them. And the interesting of that town was they all Shomer Shabbos, all very religious people. and they did have a community oven. They brought on Erev Shabbos all their food, and it warmed up, and on Shabbos they all come and picked it up. That was the challenge. That was the community oven. And since they had an Erev there that you could walk, so there was no problem. And these people, it really was really astonishing. Kept Shabbos. They put on tefillin. They had tried to make a minyan. I came and during the week, tried to get them all together and talk to them. Well, once I was done in Wenigentraft, in Mansbach, I went to Facha. Facha, there was somebody, and I remember just he was a cattle dealer. I can't remember the names. The only name I remember was because he was the one that they all had. Oh yeah, all the Goldschmidts. He was the man, and actually he was the wealthiest man in town. And they beat him up. They beat him up to the end.
Do you recognize any of these children? This is the Hebrew school class from Facha.
22.
It's early.
Yeah.
And my uncle is in here, that's Eliezer.
Hmm.
And I have my cousins here.
I know. I'm sure as they were older, I met them all. Manfred Schön.
Yeah.
And the Lehrer, Miller Seewald, I went to school with him.
This is the Lehrer?
Yeah, that's him.
Where did you go to school? Where
in
is
Hirschberg.
Tell us about your education for a moment.
That goes.
Give us a little idea.
Well, that was like a yeshiva katana by Würzburg. I went there when I was 10 years old, bar mitzvah, and the Seewald was a classmate of mine. From there we went home to Aschaffenburg, where I lived. I was born in Offenbach. And from there, the next step I realized there was no future. Went to the yeshiva. In the yeshiva, Frankfurt Dr. Breuer yeshiva was the famous yeshiva. Oh, I met all the people that were there. They were world-renowned people. Everybody went to the Breuer yeshiva in Frankfurt. There in Frankfurt, the Dr. Breuer said to the young people, you may be able to go out into the communities and they have nothing to eat. You should be a shochet. You should be able to chef in case there's a need. So I qualified to be a shochet. And then he said, well, you have to be a cantor. So the Oberkantor in Frankfurt am Main was world-renowned. And so we took lessons, cantorial lessons. And then there was a question, go out into the communities. I mean, that went endlessly.
How about Moel?
Yeah, well, that I learned later on in America. I became a moil too. And, but I remember that while I was in the yeshiva, and the shachtim that really was, everyone was a Talmid Chacham. They were highly trained, highly educated. They taught you how to shecht small and large cattle, which came to use later on when I was in, I helped the people who had nothing to eat when Hitler forbade Shechita. The people brought to me chickens in the middle of the night and I shecht the chickens so they had something to eat. And then they were afraid of that because the neighbors could report, so the meat came from Holland, chicken, whatever they ordered. But the shechita later on came to good use when I was in Florida, so many years later there was no kosher butcher shop. So we had in Titusville, we went to Titusville in Florida and I shecht there. Whatever they had, lamb and calf. And there was a man there who was a butcher, he cut it up, It is distributed meat in Florida because there was no kosher. So I helped people to do that.
So, how long were you with Breuer? What year was that about?
Well, when I graduated in
Yeah.
1933,
And how old were you about?
I was young.
70 years ago about. So you were in your 20s,
20,
early
yeah,
20s.
20.
And you finished Breuer, and what was the plan then?
Plan was of finding a position because
Okay.
he had ordained me to be a.
You had
called-
smicha, he gave you
yeah,
smicha.
Yeah,
Okay.
said I should go out, and he called me. Very important, he said. In fact, die Vereinigung Interessen orthodoxer Juden in Germany, they needed young people to go out into the countryside. So I went out into the country. I was 17, 18, and I lectured to the Jewish communities all over. That was a representative of the Orthodox Union of Germany. I went to places like Bad Kissingen. I went to places, Bad Orb. In Bad Orb, they had a big meeting when I was still a young fellow, 17, when I saw all these bearded and highly intelligently looking people. I said, how do I have the courage to stand there to try to deliver a speech? But speech making was within me. I became a very powerful orator, I have to say myself. People like to listen to me. And on that day, that was my first public speech. The people got up and applauded, and I was surprised. I wasn't sure whether it was worthwhile listening to, but seemingly it was. And that was in Frankfurt, Yeshiva, the whole history can't crowd it just
Yeah, it's just start. Yeah.
into one interview. And we went from Facha, I went to Tiefenort. There were a handful of Jewish people there. From Tiefenort, I went to
Tiefenort?
Tiefenort.
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 From Tiefenort, then there, when I had to get out of the car, there was the Stürme. The hit, and the newspaper von dem Streicher, plastered all over what we Jews are. I could not believe that people would read this and believe it. He said every Jew is an animal by nature. We are animals by nature. That was plastered all over. Don't trust a Jew. They are liars, they're cheats, and they try to take advantage of you. Well, I waited for the train to come. It went to, again I have to come back to this again. There's another town, Stadt Lengsfeld. Interestingly, Stadt Lengsfeld was the rabbis, was a big rabbis there. In fact, the founder of Reform Judaism in America was a rabbi in Stadt Lengsfeld. Beautiful synagogue. How he became a Reform rabbi, I don't understand.
Kaplan?
Weiss.
Yeah,
Weiss.
Eisenmeyer Weiss.
Weiss. Uh-huh.
Yeah. And from there I went to another town. I went to Aschenhausen. That was beyond that. They had a Sefer Torah. The people later, when I came back to Germany, they told me they buried all the Sefer Torahs in the cemetery in Aschenhausen. We went out in the cemetery to dig it up. Couldn't find anything. Maybe people,
You mean years later you went?
After the war.
A few years, yeah, right. And Bad Salzungen. From Bad Salzungen, I'm into Schmalkalden. And I'm sure what these children learned, they could really take a lesson from it, people. They learned how to pray, they learned the Aleph Beis, they knew how to daven, they knew how to bench, they knew how to translate. And only once a week I met with these people. with these children. But they were so brilliant. That why is it when the German Jews came here, they all were successful? You dealt with a highly intelligent group of people. The German Jews are highly intelligent people, were. At least the offspring I see here. What happened to people who came to America, they became millionaires, billionaires. You know the history, unbelievable. But you could see it in these children. I said something to them once on Sunday. I came back the following Sunday. They had written it out. They knew it by heart, and they astonishing. I'm sure there must be some of them still alive, particularly from Schmalkalden. I admired the children from Schmalkalden very much. It was an unusually intelligent group of kids.
You would come into the town, you would go to someone's home. How would they meet you? Every Sunday at such and such time you would be there?
Right.
And you would come to the home.
Right.
Were the children many different ages, from 6 to 15?
Yeah, when I addressed myself according to the age level.
But they all were together in the class,
All together, all one classroom.
In somebody's house.
in a house.
Yeah.
And when it came to time for a bar mitzvah, what would happen?
I couldn't make anybody bar mitzvah. They were all too young
Oh, that, okay.
or too old. Oh yes, well in town I made people bar mitzvah. In guys I made one bar mitzvah.
Well,
And I still remember you
how do you
have
do
to-
that if you don't have a minion?
I had to go by the ruling of the rabbis. At that time, there was no longer a question of a minyan. When two people get together, that's a minyan. Because what are you talking about minyan? There's nobody there.
Where-
But the tradition has to go on with two, with one.
Where was the rabbinical court? Was there a court?
Only in Frankfurt.
In Frankfurt. But you got your assignment from Fulda, from Kahn.
Yeah, well, that he was.
He was he was in charge of the
of
district.
the entire, yeah.
How did you get from Broya to Kahn?
Well, that was the first real position I got. In town, they needed a teacher, a cantor. They needed a kolboinik, somebody who was able to do everything. I heard that position be open. I made an application. They had no money, and I didn't care for money. I took the position. There was no money involved, and I had a beginning. That was my beginning. From there, this where I met my wife there. And
You just used a word. I want to know if in Germany at the time, Jews used the word kolboinik. No, that's modern Hebrew, right?
no, not modern, it's Yiddish.
Yiddish, right? Okay.
Anybody who knows everything,
Right.
supposed to know everything.
Kolboinik. Yeah. Kolbo.
Kova.
Everything is in here.
Right.
So what did you live on? Did they give you vegetables and food as you were? You stayed overnight in their
They
homes,
they all had kashrus, and nobody ate treif.
but you stayed with them and you ate with them in
Yeah.
each town.
Oh yeah. Well, not eating the meat. There was no meat to begin with, but you had vegetables and bread and challah and fruit.
So can we go back to the cattle dealers? If there was no meat, what are these cattle? What are all of his?
They were going from dorf from town to buy and sell animals, and most of them they were hated. Most cattle dealers were hated because I said they're all swindlers. They will take the healthy cattle, taking away and put in sick cattle. In fact, one cattle dealer in town, they almost killed him on the same night, but which was called Kristallnacht, when they also wanted to beat me up, which they didn't. They couldn't. For also, in God's hands. God had a plan for me, and nobody could change that plan. That plan went into effect. You know that Freudenthal was the cattle dealer. Boy, they almost killed him. The other one was Moses, also a cattle dealer. They said they took into his house, they took all his furniture, threw it out the window, and they humiliated him and beat him, and he was lying on the floor, the poor guy. He died later on in Frankfurt. But he said to me, "What are we doing now?" The Freudenthal, "What are we doing now?" I said to him, es ist zu spät, it's too late. There's nothing to do anymore, we are in their hands. How did I escape that night? Well, they almost beat him up. The others were all in a cellar, Reinhold and Tom. In the cellar, they put them all in a cellar. They took him out and me. Him to beat him up because he was a thief, he said, and me because I'm the spiritual head. On that night, the guy was the Bürgermeister, the mayor of the city, Joseph Bott. A Nazi became the mayor. The man who was really professionally trained to be mayor, then just kicked him out. So Joseph Bott, I stayed with him face to face. He was reeking from alcohol. They all were half drunk, you know. They didn't have the courage. No normal human being could do what they did. So they used alcohol. And he said to me, you have two choices. One choice is you go out in the front. They're waiting for you there with the knipper, you know, with the trenches. You know.
Truncheon.
Mm-hmm.
We'll do a number on you. Or he said, I give you another choice, get over the wall. There was a high wall there. I looked up the wall and said, oh, I'll never get over that wall, it's too high. And I said to him, why do you do this to me? He said, because if we don't do it now, we'll do it later. He said, Germany rules Deutschland today. Tomorrow it'll rule the whole world. He said in German, heute gehört uns Deutschland und morgen die ganze Welt.
What year is this?
That was Kristallnacht.
38.
Oh, this is 38.
Yeah.
That was the end.
So what happened next when you said, why are you doing this to me? How did you get out?
He went up the wall.
You went up the wall?
I did.
You did.
Yeah. You do things that you can't normally do when you have to.
I said, like in Hebrew, SOS-chem bekannt in Shorim, I lift you on eagle's wings. So I said to Hashem, now I'm in your hands. I took one big leap, and I reached the crevice of the wall and pulled myself up and jumped over. And I went down to the little creek, and I saw the water was so quiet, so nice. Everybody was sleeping. I said, how is it possible? The world is so quiet, and so much murder and treachery is going on. What is the meaning of it all? And I went down to the railroad station. I knew I had to get out. Come back to the house, I wasn't sure what they would do to me. So I laid on the railroad tracks. And the stormtroopers passed by about 100 feet when I was lying on the railroad tracks, just hiding. And singing all the songs, they were on bicycles. Well, you still hear them singing. They had done their job, you know. We beat them up and destroyed all the houses. They took down the synagogue. They smashed it. I could have gone up and saved. I was scared to death. The Sefateras, they threw on the street and they trampled on it and tore it up. You know, I can't forgive the Germans, regardless how cultured they appear to be now. Can't forgive them. That is Germany. That is within the German. The hate is still there. Although they're very close to me now, the council, the government, everybody is very kind to me. And I still don't believe it. Can't believe it. But one thing before I let you go today, there's so much to do. I mean, these were the towns I came, and on one night when I came back, they waited for me at the railroad station. If I would not have been at the Freudenthal, They opened up the house, Freudenthal.
What town was that?
Tom. I came home. I was home in the evening, and the railroad came. They were waiting for me. They had already watched me for weeks and months. You know that's my route. I take that route.
Where did you study with the children in the town of Facha? In whose house?
Tell us more about Facha.
Whose house did you study in?
Must have been somebody, because the word schön rang a bell with me. Schön. And one in the synagogue, I went to the synagogue, we had classes there. There were not many children left. I would not have known about Santa if you would not have reminded me. But I wanted to sing that song for Santa when you have an opportunity. So Santa, I remember you as a little girl, always dressed nicely, together with your cousin when you went up to Moses, where we had our Hebrew lesson sometimes we had it in the calm. I don't know what the department store was on the corner. But one song that I taught you, and I remember that I taught you that, and that may evoke a smile on your face. We talked about Shabbat, and I said, how do you greet the Shabbat? I taught the children, and I said, I was singing that song. I wonder whether you can remember that or not. And by the way, when you get up this way, I definitely want to see you. By the way, you were friendly with my brother. You were working in the office with insurance. And he told me he met you there. And when she saw the name, Okolica, said, oh, he was my teacher. Let me see, they sing you the song. Ba'olam haba, ba'olam haba, ba'olam haba, Shabbat menucha, Chevlei Moshiach, Chevlei Moshiach, Chevlei Moshiach ben David ba, Chevlei Moshiach. And now you all sang that song with Hannelore. The other was your girlfriend, I think, Hannelore Moses. She survived because her mother was married to a German.
Hannah-Laura's mother was married to a German, but she was sending her child.
She had to be Jewish, yeah.
Yeah. That's interesting.
Oh yeah, the mother, Mrs. Moses, she was a very religious woman. I think she had a position in Berlin. She met that, what was his name? Melitzer, I think was the name. Hannelore Melitzer. She married a Melitzer. I think. How does the name come to me all of a sudden? Mm-hmm. You wanted to know more about Facha, but the problem with this is that Facha was one of the many stations, you know, and a lot of it has faded from my memory.
Can you describe the shul? I have no idea what the shul looked like.
Well, that was a typical shul of a smaller community. They had the benches, they had a big almema, you could walk up. They had a little treasure chest which had the from the children when they were boys had a bris. They made for him also a what do they call it?
Wimple?
A wimple. And it was packed with wimples. That's I remember. I remember they had a beautiful Sefer Torah. I read from that Sefer Torah there. And
my grandmother, Teresa, on Kristallnacht, ran in and carried 2 Sefer Torahs out, and they were smuggled out, and one Alfred gave to his shul in Riverdale, and the other one went to Israel.
now
That's what happened to them.
That is good. That is good. And the shul was a nice. Women, the gallery.
Was it above or just alongside?
No, I think above. You have to realize we're talking about 70 years.
Yeah, but not all of these towns had shuls.
Most of them did. This I tell you. Wherever a handful of Jews met, the first thing they built a synagogue.
So why wouldn't you meet with the students at the shul?
It was more comfortable at home. Particularly when it was cold. They had no money to warm up the shul, but it was more comfortable.
Did the Yidden live all near each other in the village?
Most so, yeah.
And the shul was right next to the...
Middle, yeah. There was the shul was the center point. Like in Geisa, the Geisa had a shul that could go in the biggest city. One of the most beautiful synagogues you want to know. Gorgeous. And they burned it and tore it down.
Do you have any memory of Kaufman, my grandfather?
I must have had, because I met everybody. They all came. One thing I tell you, the hospitality was superb. Superb. These people didn't know
But
what
he was
to do.
he was a fee handler.
Kaufman was a fee handler. He had a
Fee
farm. He had a big, farm, and he had
Yeah.
cattle.
I'm sure.
And I heard from my father there used to be controversies over kashrut, and he would argue with whoever it was in town that the meat wasn't kosher enough.
Them Kaufmanns, and well, they had a shochet there, Ostrov, in Facha. He was really superb, highly learned and highly qualified, and the best shochet you wanted to have. Under his shkita you could trust. What was before, I don't know. He was Polish, trained in Poland, came to Germany to make some money, I guess. They hired him in as a teacher and as a shochet.
So you supplemented his teaching also then?
Yeah, well, he was there after he left, or before he, I don't know how our paths crossed,
Mm-hmm.